This is CBC Vancouver News.
Very apparent, given Devon's death, that something had gone tragically wrong on the site.
This is the whole of the organization that needs to look at this and do the right thing.
Safety failures outlined in a new report paint a damning picture of what led up to the death of a young firefighter last summer. Plus,
the door to the suite was left open into the hallway, and the fire spread significantly.
uncertainty for dozens of residents, some with serious injuries, forced out of their Kitsilano apartment building by fire. Also, a fresh coat of promises from the Premier for Highway 1 upgrades through the Fraser Valley.
The volume of traffic that's on this road means we can't do all of this work at the same time. We have to do it in phases.
Met with frustration from mayors.
A few months before an election, construction not even underway for 2 more years. It's a little underwhelming.
Hello, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. We begin in the interior, where safety failures in a new report paint a damning picture of firefighting protocols. It stems from a WorkSafe BC investigation into the death of Devon Gale. She died when a burning tree fell on her near Revelstoke last July. The CBC's Brady Strachan has more on the calls mounting for better training.
The death of Devon Gale sent a shockwave through the province. Just 19 years old, Gale was already in her 3rd season with the BC Wildfire Service. Last summer, friends and family members mourned her loss at a memorial service.
She was a light. Nobody met Devon without loving her. You were instantly drawn to her beautiful, sweet, pure energy.
It was attended by Premier David Eby and hundreds of her fellow wildland firefighters. Now, details have emerged about what led up to Gale's death and, more importantly, what didn't happen with regards to safety protocols around danger trees. A WorkSafe BC report says Gale was using a chainsaw to cut a log on the forest floor when a burning cedar tree fell and killed her. 2 other firefighters were injured trying to save her. The report lays out the missed safety steps prior to Gale's death, including that firefighters brought up concerns to their supervisor about the burning tree, but despite this, the burning cedar was not assessed, and instead workers were told to use a heads-up approach to the burning cedar and stay away from it if they were uncomfortable working around it. The report finds there were several young or new firefighters on the crew, but there was no documentation they received the required young and new worker health and safety orientation or new recruit boot camp training before being deployed to this fire. The report also finds the BC Wildfire Service is aware of the safety concerns around dangerous trees, but the normalization of risk has been justified within the Wildfire Service's culture, and safety procedures are not being followed as a result. The BC Wildfire Service has responded to the report. David Greer leads the organization.
This isn't, gross negligence by certain individuals. This is a whole of this is the whole of the organization that needs to look at this and do the right thing.
On Wednesday, Premier David Eby said he's directing the Wildfire Service to implement the report's recommendations.
It was a commitment that I made to Devon's family, was that this death of a remarkable woman with all the potential in the world would not be in vain.
The union that represents provincial firefighters says the report shows the high level of burnout at the BC Wildfire Service. It says the high turnover means firefighters have to work long hours in extreme conditions, an issue, it says, that needs to be addressed to make working conditions safer for all firefighters. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
Well, to Vancouver, dozens of residents, many of them seniors or people with disabilities, are out of their homes indefinitely. Their housing complex in Kitsilano caught fire overnight, forcing them to leave immediately. As Yasmin Panea tells us, it's not clear when they'll be able to return home.
Residents say they were awoken by the sounds of screaming as flames scorched multiple units. Fire officials say all 38 people living in the building had to flee. 8 people were taken to hospital.
First crews on scene found a suite on the 2nd floor that was fully involved and had already transitioned to the 3rd floor through an open window.
The deputy fire chief says while the investigation is still ongoing, it appears the fire started on a couch on the second floor and that the man who lives in the suite is a smoker. He says the elderly man suffered smoke inhalation and burns.
We've had extensive damage to the fire suite of origin as well as the fire above. Unfortunately, the door to the suite was left open into the hallway and the fire spread significantly into the second floor hallway.
The building, owned by BC Housing, offers affordable housing to seniors and those living with disabilities. Residents are being allowed limited re-entry to recover items, but fire officials say the building is uninhabitable, with gas and power shut down. As they wait to see when they can return, displaced residents are being provided short-term accommodation, food and clothing by the Vancouver Emergency Management Agency. Yasmin Raneya, CBC News, Vancouver.
Uncertainty clouds the death of an Indigenous infant. The 5-week-old was under the care of BC's Ministry of Children and Family Development. The child's mother says social workers took the baby from her shortly after he was born due to suspicion of drug use. Well, now his parents are pressing the government for answers. They claim the reasons the province took the baby were biased.
The fact that Indigenous parents are more likely to be subject to these type of notifications/birth alerts is problematic and continues to perpetuate the systemic problems where Indigenous families are not able to stay together, and the government is intervening and taking these families apart.
In a statement to CBC News, Minister Grace Laura says she cannot publicly comment on this case in order to maintain confidentiality. Well, 5 BC men have been charged in what RCMP are calling a drug superlab bust in Maple Ridge in Coquitlam. Officers seized 49 kilos of MDMA, also known as ecstasy. They say the lab contained chemicals to produce 80 kilograms more.
The number of vessels that were present, they could have potentially produced 40 kilograms of MDMA every 48 hours. If they were continuously running. So that gives you an idea of the scale of these super labs.
The investigation in this case started in 2022. After 4 search warrants, Mounties had identified multiple people and properties involved. And along with the drugs, a Mercedes-Benz G-Class SUV, a Tesla 3, and over $50,000 in cash were also seized. Well, the Premier is pledging more relief for drivers on Highway 1 through the Fraser Valley.
It will ease commutes by car, it will ease commutes by transit, and it will ease the shipment of goods right across this country on the Trans-Canada Highway.
The province will spend $2.6 billion to widen the Trans-Canada in Abbotsford between the Mount Lehman exit and Highway 11. The project will eventually see the highway expanded through the Sumas Prairie toward Chilliwack. But construction isn't expected to start on this phase until 2026 and won't be completed until 2031. The mayor of the township of Langley says while the funding is good news, the timeline is simply too slow.
I think this has been a chronic issue for so long. I think it is a little disappointing to see hearing about it being completed in 2031, announced a few months before an election, construction not even underway for 2 more years.
Premier Eby acknowledges frustrations about the pace and rising costs of the highway improvements, blaming in part the 2021 floods and more expensive construction materials as factors in the delay. A former contender who ran to be leader of the BC Liberals has left to join the BC Conservatives. In 2022, Gavin Dew went up against Kevin Falcon in the party leadership race. Now he's criticizing Falcon's tenure and plans to run in Kelowna Mission for the growing BC Conservatives.
What I had seen is unfortunately the party that I was a part of had really just was falling apart at the seams. And unfortunately, it is Kevin's leadership that has run BC United into the ground.
Dew also wrote a scathing opinion piece in the National Post claiming that, quote, Kevin Falcon took the wheel of a vehicle that once won races, insisted he knew a shortcut, and then drove off a cliff. Dew, his wife, and 2 young children moved to Kelowna last year. Well, still with politics, a former BC MP who served the Fraser Valley for 20 years has died.
Full speed ahead and damn the torpedoes.
Chuck Strahl's family says he died Tuesday in Chilliwack after a courageous and exemplary battle with a rare form of lung cancer. After working in the family logging business, Strahl ran and won a riding in the Fraser Valley in 1993 with the then Reform Party. He served until 2011 under the Canadian Alliance and Conservative banners and was at several points federal Minister of Transport, Agriculture, and then Indian Affairs. His son Mark, who followed in his father's footsteps and won Chuck's seat after he retired, says his dad's deep Christian faith was at the heart of who he was. Chuck Strahl was 67. On to BC's wildfires now. There are 394 active fires burning in the province right now, 4 of them of note. The BC Wildfire Service says rain is in the forecast for several areas, and it's expected to bring much needed moisture. Showers are likely for the northeast and the southeast. Right now, almost 40% of active fires are classified as out of control. More than 1/3 are burning in the Southeast Fire Centre. Well, housing, healthcare, and education, those are some of the key issues a new report from BC's Human Rights Commissioner highlights as having the greatest human rights impact for British Columbians.
The systemic inequalities highlighted in this report impact all of us, but disproportionately harm those who are marginalized in our society. The 10 issue areas that are described here are not experienced in isolation. Many residents of BC experience violations of their human rights in multiple areas of life, in ways that intersect and compound the harm that they're experiencing.
The Human Rights Commissioner says unaffordable, inaccessible, and inappropriate housing tops the list for human rights issues in BC. Well, to Vernon now, where the BC SPCA has seized 32 Pomeranian puppies and dogs from an, quote, irresponsible breeder. They found the dogs in an unsanitary and unventilated garage. CBC talked to the organization about this investigation.
We received a concern from a member of the public who had purchased a puppy from a breeder in Vernon. And unfortunately, the puppy soon became really ill. She immediately took it to a vet, and unfortunately, it passed away. The puppy, it was determined that the puppy had presented with the parvovirus. Our officers attended, and when we attended, there were a number of concerns, and the owner surrendered 4 puppies to us. Unfortunately, 2 of these puppies didn't make it. They died of this parvovirus. Our animal protection officers applied for and was successful in obtaining a warrant to search. We attended the property, and as a result, 32 dogs, including puppies, were removed from the home. All the dogs were kept in a garage. They were separated into different pens. There was very little bedding. There was some sawdust or shavings on the floor. Diarrhea was present. The food and water containers were contaminated with flies and wasps. There was no stimulation for them, nothing. This is such a heartbreaking case because we're really keeping our fingers crossed that all these dogs will pull through. And if there's enough evidence there, our animal protection officers will in all likelihood recommend charges to Crown Counsel.
Well, coming up next, it was an accidental discovery, but now UBC researchers have created a new super black material. We'll tell you what it could be used for after the break. Welcome back. Researchers at UBC have created a new super black material. It absorbs almost all light and could improve things like telescopes, optical devices, and consumer goods. Our science and climate specialist Darius Madavi went to find out more.
At first glance, this may look like a regular watch, but if you look closely at the face, you'll see almost nothing. And that's what makes it so exciting. Underneath the glass is a brand new material that absorbs over 99% of all visible light. This is Kitsilano, the first ultra-black wood, and researchers here at UBC are going to show us how to make it.
This black isn't like a pigment black, it's called a structural black. It's just based on that, it's based on the structural, the structure of the wood. You walk through a forest and you see a bunch of tall trees, and you don't, sometimes if it's like a, like a really dense forest of all these mishmash of bushes, you don't see the light coming through. So that's what's happening.
Super black materials have a reflectance generally agreed to be below 1%. So it means 99% of all of the light within a defined wavelength range is absorbed by the material.
So hardly any visible light actually escapes.
Ultraviolet and visible light.
All right, this is our plasma reactor here, and we're going to load it in right now. So it creates like a plasma, which is kind of like a gas. So it hits that surface of the wood. It causes chemical changes, but also plasma etching. It removes the surface of the wood. Once we're done, we release the air, and then once the air is back to the room pressure, the door will open, and we'll open it right here. And then this is when I take the sample out.
Oh, smelly.
Yes, so this is what it looks like.
Wow.
There is actually a white layer on and that's like the fragments of the plasma etching. This is when we go into the room hood and we use air to clean the surface up a bit.
Wow. What was the accidental discovery?
Well, the accidental discovery is interesting. We started off this work some years ago hoping to use high-energy plasmas to literally machine the wood surface to improve the water resistance of the surface. And then I said to Kenny, my graduate student, who's done all the work, we should look at different surfaces of wood. Normally you use a surface like this, which is the side grain, but I said, why don't we look at some end grain material? So this is the direction in which the water flows in the tree.
Right.
And so Kenny did those experiments and brought a sample like this into my office, and I said, wow, that's black. In fact, that's super black.
So what sets this apart from other ultra black materials?
It's made from sustainable material. So one basswood tree could produce 200,000 watch faces, or close to 1 million gemstones. No mining involved, just a natural material, easy to treat, cheap. Darius, we're shining a cell phone light through this Kitsilano gemstone, and you can see the wood structure there. So you can see the pores that conduct the water in the tree. You can see the growth ring. We came up with this name. It's a mixture. Nyx is the Greek goddess of darkness, and Xylon is the Greek name for wood. So we combined them to create the name Kitsilano. We were the first people to make a super black material from wood.
All of these are so cool. Thank you so much for showing us. But one last question. When can I get this one in the store?
Well, Darius, you're top of the waiting list.
Oh,
so as soon as we make another one.
You're looking at a live shot of Science World tonight. Well, that cooler and cloudier weather is translating to some rain. We'll tell you where after the break. Stay with us.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Welcome back. Turning to weather news now. Ernesto is a Category 1 hurricane after dumping torrential rain and knocking out power right across Puerto Rico. The storm is now turning north into the open Atlantic. It's expected to strengthen again, possibly into a Category 3. Now, the Canadian Hurricane Centre says it should hit south of Nova Scotia by Monday, though it's too early to predict just how hard.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Let's bring in our Darius Madavli for a look at the forecast. And Darius, that cloudy, cool pattern seems to be here, and in some places that means rain, which is good news.
Yes, any rain is welcome, especially because we've had so much lightning and dry lightning, especially over the last few days in parts of the interior. Today, that was not the case. Most of that lightning, or very little lightning happened at all, mostly concentrated in a very small area around Revelstoke, and where we did see it, not up in the northeast, which is where we were worried about some severe lightning happening. Now, in terms of precipitation over the next few days, we actually have a proper system rolling in rather than just that convective activity that we've had lately. You'll notice some coming up towards the coast, and then overnight Saturday into Sunday, potentially some proper rain coming to parts of Vancouver Island and the lower mainland. So here in Vancouver, it's too early to put a proper number on it, but I'd say anywhere from 5 to 15 millimeters of rain are possible over that span from overnight Saturday into Sunday, potentially continuing into Sunday morning. We'll get a better picture of it over the next couple days, but for now, it does seem like a little bit of moisture is on the way. So, you know, the flowers will be happy. I'll be less happy because I wanted to go to the beach, but we'll take it. There will be sunny times, sunny breaks across the south coast this weekend, except maybe for the North Island and the west coast of the island. But everybody should get at least a little bit of sunshine. We saw there those temperatures staying relatively close to seasonal, even though we have this low pressure system starting to move down the coast. Now we have that ridge of high pressure setting up over the prairie, so they're going to be quite hot for the next few days and heading into next week. We have this low pressure system, which means cloud coming in and out, maybe some precipitation, but generally temperatures will hover right around seasonal. I know it won't feel the most summery, but we have been pretty consistently 2 or 3 degrees, maybe 4 degrees in some places above seasonal this summer. So, you know, it's only fair, balancing it out a little bit. Lots of sunshine across the province tomorrow, but still a risk of lightning in a few places, so we're going to be keeping an eye on that. And on the island, also some sunshine, even for the west coast of the island tomorrow. A little bit of relief before we head into that cloudier pattern, rainier pattern, heading into the weekend. Here in Vancouver, we do have a couple humid days, Thursday and Saturday in particular. Friday is bang on 22 degrees, right about what we're actually expecting to see in terms of the actual temperature. So a little bit of relief, but yeah, we've got some rain ahead, Tanya. It's been a while since we've seen this icon.
It's very true, and yes, as you said, the grass will enjoy it. Appreciate that. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for this Wednesday, August 14th. For news anytime, anywhere, download the free CBC News app. And you can always find us online as well. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.